Welcome back to Warriors Den episode 108. Today's guest is 5th Dan Black Belt Krav Maga practitioner Yeela Elyashar. Now, Yeela is one of the top ranked female practitioners and one of the top ranked individuals in general that teaches globally under the Krav Maga organization Krav Maga Israel. And the Krav Maga world can actually be very confusing because there are so many organizations and so many approaches to Krav Maga, so methodology for ranking, which has created the issue around standardization for what is expected of individuals. And this is actually a little clip from the podcast on Yeela's thoughts on ranking.
Well, first of all, it's not just in North America. I know that in Europe, it's the same thing. I was recently in France, and when I asked people there how long it takes them to get from a beginner's level from white belt to black belt, then they said it takes about 2 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years in Israel, you don't even reach orange belt. So what?
This is actually something that I wholeheartedly agree with her, that the standards and expectations for Krav Maga needs to be increased. It's good to hear that it took her over 20 years to get her 5th Dan, which is very appropriate. And I think the lack of standards is probably one of the reasons that Krav Maga has a black eye. Now, Yeela travels, as I mentioned, teaches all over the world, and she also volunteers for the police force in Israel. And she does this professionally for a living, and it was an absolute pleasure to have her on, as there should be more female practitioners at high levels, and she is one of the few that has dedicated her life, as mentioned, so she has lots to say. This is a great episode. Check her out on social media. I'll post it in the show notes, and the links will be available, and as well as Krav Maga Israel. So here is episode 108 with Yeela Elyashar. Thank you for listening to the Warriors Den podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions since 2013. If you like this podcast and our content, make sure you support us in the many various ways you can. The easy and free ways start with liking, subscribing, following, and leaving a positive review wherever you may be listening or watching. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram at Urban Tactics Krav Maga, and Twitter at Urban Tactics KM. You can also follow us on YouTube and Rumble at Urban Tactics Krav Maga. Another great way to support this podcast, as well as our other content, is to check out our blog at www.utkmblog.com. Here you can check out our weekly curriculum, our various blog posts, and general ideas about Krav Maga and self-defense. For those of you feeling generous, you can also click on the Support Us tab and send donations our way so we can continue providing the awesome content you love. And for those who would like a little more for their money, you can check out www.utkmu.com and learn Krav Maga and self-defense online as we teach it at our school. You can check out the various levels of curriculum with monthly or annual subscriptions and learn Krav Maga so that you too can walk in peace. Small disclaimer, UTKMU is meant to supplement your regular Krav Maga self-defense or martial arts training in person with qualified instructors and is not a substitute for in-person real training. And for those of you who want to look as good as I know you feel, you can always check out www.utkmshop.com, where you can check out and buy the latest UTKM merch from us. Warning, wearing UTKM merch will not turn you from a lamb to a lion. To start your transformation from lamb to lion, you must start your training journey today. Stay consistent and never give up wherever you may be. Side effects of wearing UTKM merch may be chronic bouts of kicking ass, feeling good, and learning to walk in peace. And of course, if you are in the Metro Vancouver area, come train with us in person. Sign up at www.urbantacticskm.com. I would love to help you on your journey from lamb into lion. And now, back to the episode. Krav Maga is not just a self-defense system. It is a way of life. Warriors Den is a podcast for Kravists, fighters, martial artists, warriors, politicians, and general citizens. Consider this. The society that separates scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Lucidity. Your host, Jonathan Fader, talks to guests in an open and uncensored format about their fights, their philosophies, and their lives. No topic is taboo, and the conversation may start in one place and end in another. As the quote suggests, you cannot separate the warrior from the politics and the world around them, as a true warrior must be a student in all forms of art and science.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions.
Hey, welcome back. I am here with Yeela Elyashar, one of the top-ranked females in Krav Maga in Israel. How are you today?
Great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Cool.
Thanks for coming on, of course. I never know who's going to say yes, and with the time difference, sometimes people are like, maybe. So, thanks again. Um, let's just start with, how did you get into Krav Maga in the first place?
Well, actually, it all started with my brother. My brother was the one who started Krav Maga. I was actually a very active kid, and I did a few martial arts as a little girl. I did some judo, I did some kung fu, and I used to live in a big city called Haifa. It's one of the largest cities in Israel. And when I turned 13, we moved to a small town, and it was kind of a shock for me because I had to leave all my friends and all my activities in the big city and just move to the small town. And there was nothing here. I mean, there was judo and there was Krav Maga. And I didn't really know what Krav Maga meant back then, but my brother tried it out. And then he said, well, you have to join, you have to try it. And I was like, I don't think so. I was like a rebel back then, because we just moved to a small town, and I was like, I want my friends, I want the big city, I want to get back to my life. And I was 13, as I said, so I'm a teenager. I'm just moved to a new junior high. It was crazy. And then after a year or so, he kept on trying to convince me to go. And then I said, you know what, fine, I'll go. And the moment I stepped in, I realized this is where I want to be. Yeah. And I fell in love with the system. I always knew that I was going to be in martial arts ever since I was a little girl. I was always a very sportive person, but nothing caught me quite as much as Krav Maga did. And I was really hooked on it. And when a year later, when we go to the 10th grade, when we're 16, we have this thing here in Israel where we have to volunteer for 60 hours wherever we want, just as part of school-related stuff. So I turned to my coach. My coach's name is Ilan Fadlon, and I told him, I think I want to help you with the kids. And that's where I started teaching, actually. And that's when I realized that this is what I want to do with my life. This is me. This is where I found myself. So that's amazing. Krav Maga changed my life completely.
That's great you found it. And when I was young, I was like, I want to do martial arts, but I don't want to do karate. But that's all my parents knew, and there was no Krav Maga in Vancouver at the time, of course. That I ended up starting when I was a little older. So I think you had a very nice path to finding your life.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when I lived in the big city, there was Krav Maga over there, but I never really knew what it was.
Yeah.
I wasn't that exposed to it. I don't think it's even, it was new even back then. Even when we're talking about being in Israel, and Krav Maga is an Israeli self-defense method, I was there, but I didn't really know what Krav Maga meant. Other kids didn't know what it means. And today, when you ask kids which martial art they go to, they all say Krav Maga without any questions. It's just, so that's crazy.
Yeah, I know, it's always interesting, because I mean, in most countries, if you're like a teenager and you're like, I want to be a martial artist for the rest of my life, it's frowned upon. Is that still the case in somewhere like Israel, or do people be like, oh, that's cool, or they just expect stay in the military?
No, actually, it's not frowned upon, but it is not a very common thing. I mean, there are people who their main job is to be to be a martial arts instructor, but not many. most people do it as a side job, as an extra job.
Yeah.
They work in high tech, and then after, in the afternoons and the evenings, they just, they teach, I don't know, karate, judo, whatever.
Mm.
But not many of them do it as a full-time job. Not many of them are as crazy as we are. But
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
So how long? What rank are you right now?
fifth Dan black
Fifth
belt.
Dan. Yeah. And how long
Yeah,
did that? How long did that process take you?
22 years
Sounds about
approximately.
right.
Yeah, yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
You
Yeah,
know,
22 years. Yeah.
because it's interesting, like in the Krav Maga world, depending on the organization that you're with, they either have belt rankings as was originally
Right,
introduced, or they have the patch, or they have nothing. And
right.
when I hear it took you 20 years to get your fifth Dan, which is appropriate, it gives me hope because outside of Israel, at least, there's like an image of Krav Maga that it's a bit of a belt factory or there's no standards, especially in North America, unfortunately. So maybe because I'm not actually that familiar with your organization, maybe explain for people who don't know the sort of process that it would take to get to that rank.
Well, first of all, it's not just in North America. I know that in Europe, it's the
Mm,
same thing. I was
right.
recently in France, and when I asked people there how long it takes them to get from a beginner's level from white belt to black belt, then they said it takes about 2 years, which
Mm,
is crazy.
yeah.
I mean, two years in Israel, you don't even reach orange belt. So
Mm,
what?
yeah.
Um, so yes, it's kind of different. My organization, by the way, is an organization that was um, it's like it's quite a new organization. We used to be a part of the Krav Maga Haim Zut organization,
Mm,
and we split up somewhere along the way. A lot of politics, like all martial arts
yeah. Yeah.
and all Krav Maga organizations have. We still stayed in touch, but we're pretty, we're kind of a small organization over here.
Mm,
And when it comes to ranking, I can tell you that it's pretty difficult you know, to pass the grading tests. And the reason we do it is because we want people to be professional. We
mm,
want people to understand that they earned this ranking, this level by hard work and in here. I mean, I know in some places Krav Maga is more like a sport.
mm,
In here, Krav Maga is a sport, but it's also for survival.
mm,
So if you can't survive under during your test when we're checking you and we're asking you to do all kinds of simulations or releases from different situations, then you don't deserve this belt. You don't deserve this rank.
yeah.
Some of our students start as kids and then they grow up and they join the army, and they meet Krav Maga over there as well. And over there, it is survival. It is for survival. So it's so we want to make sure that if you get there, if you ever have to use it, then you know that you know the proper Krav Maga, that you've really earned your rank. You really worked hard for it.
Mm,
And I don't think there's I mean, usually it takes people between 7 to 10 years to get to black belts, and
mm,
that's kind of a short period of time. That's if someone is really, really working hard and training a lot.
mm.
And yeah, so when I hear people, reaching the black belt and after 2 years or 3 years, it's kind of makes me feel weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like
what?
everyone makes fun of Taekwondo because they're
Right?
notorious for doing that. I always just tell people, I don't know, are you familiar with the 10,000 hour rule? Originally made famous
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Malcolm Gladwell.
definitely.
So
Yes.
contextually, people they don't understand that. And it's like, okay, that's a full-time job, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day for 5.5 years. But here's the thing, most who actually works a job like that. So the reality, it's like 10 years,
Right.
maybe. So I mean, I think in any martial arts, depending on the amount of training, etc., 8 to 15 years is usually where you want to be looking at for a black belt. And often I get people come in sometimes from other organizations and they're like, yeah, I got my yellow orange belt. I'm like, how long did you train? And they're like, oh, 2 months, a month. Oh, but I did a course. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like This is crazy. And then when I tell them like I don't rank recognition because of that situation in my school, they're
Mhm.
like, and then they don't want to come back.
I know I get a ton of messages from people saying they want to be part of my organization
Yeah.
and they need a course and they have a Krav Maga instructor's diploma. And I was like, where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
And that's the real main problem. I mean, Krav Maga used to be such a small thing. It used to be only in Israel, and then it kind of, you know, everything just kind of burst out, and everybody's doing Krav Maga all over the world, but there's
Yeah.
not that much supervision over it. So, and you
Mm.
can't really get to a level where, get to a point where you've got supervision because all the, top Krav Maga instructors in Israel, they don't really want to decide who's going to be the one to take control over this
Mm.
because everybody wants to take control over this.
Yeah.
As I said, politics. But that's okay. That's part of the that's part of the process. I mean, I know a lot of people who are doing Krav Maga. I don't, I'm not disrespecting. I will never disrespect anyone, but I can see a lot of people saying they're doing Krav Maga and they don't really know that they're not doing Krav Maga.
Mm.
So yeah, that's a sad thing, by the
That's
way.
actually well, not as it is a sad thing, but you bring up a good point, which is what is Krav Maga to you? How do you define it? Because there's lots of different ideas of what it is. So, what do you think it is?
That's a great question. I mean, Krav Maga has to be about self-defense, has
Mm.
to be about self-defense. And self-defense has a lot of things combined into it. So it's not just the techniques. It's not only how do you defend yourself against someone who's stabbing you or hitting you with a stick or choking you, but it's also how do you fight? And not many people understand the combination between the things. Okay, so
Mm.
some people are doing like Muay Thai and there are no I don't know, no groin kicks or stuff like that, and they still call it Krav Maga, and they're
Mm.
only doing sparring. And some people leave the sparring aside and they only do the techniques, which is okay, but you have to know how to hit someone and you have to know how to get hit if by any chance you get to a point where you're gonna be in an actual fight. But I think the problem is what I told you earlier, that people treat it as a sport
Mm.
outside of Israel. They don't really understand the meaning of doing Krav Maga for survival. I mean, you have special classes for women over here and for teenagers and for little kids. I work with 4-year-old kids.
Mm.
I don't know how many people around the world are doing this, but I work on self-defense techniques with 4-year-old kids. I keep telling their parents we're going to do things that could happen to them in their, in kindergarten. Someone
Mm.
might pull their hair and might push them, and they might fall. So I'm changing my classes. I'm changing everything to match this age. So I mean, Krav Maga is dynamic, but you still have to maintain this whole self-defense plus knowing how to defend yourself against uh, punches, kicks, whatever. So it's a combination of a few things,
Mm.
um, but you have to be really careful. And it can't look like karate. It can't look like any of these traditional martial arts, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's I would say dirtier. I would say it's they always say the Krav Maga is dirty because you have to be efficient. You have to hit vulnerable points, and you have to take control of the opponent as fast as you can. And
Yeah.
not many people do that. Some people try to make it look pretty and make it look like the self defense technique is like a kata from that you take from karate or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. It's
So it's kind
interesting
of
you say, like, because here nobody thinks of it as a sport, even if they're treating it as such. For me, like when I do my testing, it's like it's gonna suck for you guys because I'm
good,
preparing you for real violence, and if you can't
good.
handle the test, the most extreme example I had, and it was not my fault. I had a student who came. This isn't when I first started doing the school. So we were playing around how do we rank people? How should we do stuff? And we
Yeah,
played around with the idea of like a 6 week 2 month crash course for an instructorship, which
yeah,
I don't like doing anymore. It's just I think you need the years and years and years sort of thing. And a friend of my former colleague who was a drill sergeant in the Canadian military and a
No.
hand-to-hand combat instructor in the Canadian military, came and did our course, and he we were testing him, and halfway through the test, he couldn't use the use of his right arm anymore. And at the time, we didn't know what the heck happened. But him being the crazy bastard he was, he finished. And I use that story as the example to people. Um, what we did is we tied his hand behind his back and said, keep going with
Hmm.
one hand, and you got to finish the test because that can happen. Now, what had happened, he'd actually cracked his vertebrae in the military, came,
Oh,
did our 2 month course, and then right in the test, it pinched a nerve and
oh,
it went crazy. But that's my expectations, and I tell people that like in class, if you get hurt, sit out, rest, but in the test, as long as it's not,
keep going.
as long as I don't need to send you to the hospital, you got to keep going,
Right. Yeah.
and because, real violence, especially in a place like Vancouver, people don't always know what real violence is. People who complain about violence here, I'm like, this is one of the most peaceful cities in like the Western
Hmm.
world. Like, this is not a violent place. And just the expectations. And some people will do like the first test, yellow belt, and then they never come back because they're like, I don't want to do another test. Like, no way. It's good and bad. Business, it's bad, but it's to water it down like a lot of the North American gyms have done, where it's like a kickboxing class the whole time.
Right.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, yeah. It's not
Yeah,
supposed to be pretty. It's not supposed to be fun. I mean, it is fun once
yeah.
you
Sometimes.
get used. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, yeah. It's fun in a weird kind of way. It's
Yeah,
hard to explain. There
yeah,
are people who there are people who come to classes as well. They also in here. They come to classes, and I keep telling them, you're starting right now, so we're going to do a few basic stuff, but get ready to go over there and start sparring and everything, and you're
mm,
going to get hit. And they say, yeah, yeah, no problem, no problem. So you know it kind of, you have two types of people. Some people start sparring and then you never see them again. Some
right.
people start sparring and they go like, oh my god, this was so fun. And these are the type of people I like,
Yeah,
by the way. But
the
yeah,
crazy
I'm
ones.
yeah, the crazy ones. And as I said, I work with kids as well, and
Mm,
trying to make a kid understand that they have to deal with pain,
mm,
and that even if they get hurt, they have to keep going, is a difficult task. But I'm happy to say that it's working. I mean, they start sparring at the age of they start sparring at 7 years old, 8 years old. You
mm,
should see them. It's amazing. It's amazing. And they I mean, they kick each other, and you can hear the kicks. They hit each other, and and they smile and they laugh. They
right.
understand how to handle this situation. It's not, they don't get stressed. They don't get, they don't freeze, which is exactly what I want.
Mm,
So yeah, as you said, just toning it down a little bit is kind of messing the whole point of doing Krav Maga.
yeah.
And but yeah, what can we do? As I said,
Yeah,
there's not really any supervision about it, the whole thing.
yeah, the like for one of the I started with one of the major organizations, well known globally, uh, and it got to the point where it was like, okay, if you want to really succeed, you have to come to Israel. Now, I generally don't have a problem with that, but you know what? A lot of students in Canada not going to do that. They're like, you mean to
Right.
rank up, I need to fly to Israel? Not because they have an issue with Israel, it's just people can't afford that, and the 2 3
True.
weeks at times, and there was no real progression for people who were not willing to travel. The closest they would do is like, okay, you got to fly to the States. And I'm like, but you have someone in Canada who's representing you guys. Why do I need to go to the States? And a lot of the Israeli, yeah, money, of course. But the other thing I find, well, there's two things. It was people don't realize Canada is huge, and there's 5 cities, and they're not close to each other, and it costs a
Right.
lot of money. And the airlines here are very expensive. For me to fly from like Vancouver to Toronto is way more expensive than for me to fly from LA to New York because of
Wow.
taxes and that. So people just don't get it's not worth it for people unless they're going to
Yeah.
make a living for it. And the other thing is that we were told that, oh, there's not enough money in Canada by multiple organizations. We don't want to do stuff in Canada. And I don't necessarily blame them because, like, anytime I have flown someone over here, they're used to doing like 100-person seminar in Europe. But I bring them here and they'll be like 10 of my students. And it's like, I can't afford to bring people here if nobody's going to show
Oh,
up. unless you're doing a sport here where there's, huge draw, and even then, like jujitsu is huge here. Like I do jujitsu as well. And people will bring in world-renowned people. There's still 10, 15 people show up to the seminars. And it's like nobody can afford that if it's I have to pay like 5 grand. So it got to the point where it's like from a business perspective, working with some of these big organizations, it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
And to be honest, my students didn't care. They're just like, I'm coming to see what you can do for me. So I find that's one of the issues globally is if local instructors are not qualified enough to rank people on their own, it's going to be a huge, huge growth problem. And I think,
yeah,
that's something the Gracies did really well is they sent out their best black belts all over the world first, got it popular. And unfortunately for Krav Maga, the pathway was we're gonna do week long instructor course or 4 day instructor course and spread it all over the world, and then
right.
we are where we are.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe you can speak to that. Like, what do you guys? First, I you didn't mention. Just tell people the organization you're with specifically, and then what do you guys look for in an instructor?
So my organization is called Krav Maga Israel.
Mm,
It's called KMIL, which is the initials for Krav Maga Israel. And actually, I can tell you that even here in Israel, I've got a lot of instructors, but they're
mm,
not all working. They're not all doing anything with it. We've sent a lot of students to the instructors course, which is about a month here as well. But there are, you have to be at least blue belt, and you have to
mm,
be at least a few years in Krav Maga before doing that, before you can actually do this course. And some of these people, I have to tell you, some of these people did this instructor's course, and they opened up their own places, their own classes and groups, and then they decided that they don't want to do Krav Maga anymore, and they
mm.
just, I mean, I got one instructor who decided he's doing Muay Thai from now on because it was, more beneficial.
Yeah.
He earned more money by doing that and by doing Krav Maga. I don't know why, but that's what he decided. And
Mm,
one guy decided he's going to be a boxing instructor. I don't know how he got to that, but I'm actually searching for years. I've been searching for someone who's going to be as devoted to the actual Krav Maga world as I am, and as my coach is, and maybe a few more of my instructors are. And it's pretty difficult
mm,
to find someone who's actually going to, take it seriously, and not be tempted to take other things and start doing like competitions, which we never do. We don't
mm,
touch this thing because competitions means rules, and rules in Krav Maga are like oil and water. It doesn't
yeah.
work together. So it's a problem because I think that um, people today are very influenced by what they see on TV. I mean, UFC is very strong, MMA is very strong, Jiu-Jitsu is very strong right now. It's
Mm,
kind of rising, and it's rising above the Krav Maga hype that was, a couple of years back. And now everybody's thinking financially. So yeah, I'm a Krav Maga instructor, but I want to do this and this and this, and all of a sudden, Krav Maga kind of disappears. Um, so it's even here it's difficult to find someone who's going to be devoted and to stay loyal to the Krav Maga and not
mm.
change things and not try to, and be tempted to
Yeah.
all of a sudden send these students to do. I mean, I'm not. I don't say that people shouldn't do boxing or Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu. I did some. I did Jiu-Jitsu. I did a year of Jiu-Jitsu, and I really loved it. But I have a major back injury which
Mm,
didn't allow me to do that because
yeah.
I'm a very aggressive person. I know I don't look that way, but I'm a very aggressive person. And when I did the when I did the jiu-jitsu, I was just, you know I was really all over the place, and I was doing whatever I could. I was out when I got into it. I got addicted to it because I like it,
Yeah.
and it ended up with me getting injured. So
Yeah.
so I'm stopping that for a while. I might come back to it later, but I really wanted to do it to enrich my whole world. I wanted to know a little more about the ground world, and I love boxing. I did few boxing lessons. I really love it, and I do combine it in my classes. But this is not, the things that I'm going to test my students. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to. It's just not going to be the main thing I'm going to test. Yes, I want to test you on sparring and everything, and I will teach you all these kicks, these crazy kicks that maybe you see only in Taekwondo or whatever. But sparring wise, I want you to use the dirty Krav Maga, and so I guess I'm still searching for other instructors inside my organization that are going to stay loyal, as I said, to the true Krav Maga.
I
And it's
think
difficult.
it is difficult. I mean, there's the business aspect. If you want to
Yeah,
make
as I said, as I told you before, I think my students are also looking at me and at my coach as an example. I mean, we do it as our main job. This is my job. This is the only thing I do. This is how I make money, by teaching Krav Maga. And I teach every day except for Saturday and for hours. And but I love it. I mean, it's great. And I keep telling my students when I send them out to an instructor's course, I keep telling them, you don't have to do it as a main job. You can just take one class or two classes, and this is it, and just put all your work into these two classes and do whatever you want afterwards. But I think it's difficult for people to see it, as you said, as a financial, as something that will give them pleasure as well as make them earn money. So
yeah, and it can be tough, like psychological. I've found, like, because I do jujitsu as well. That's my sort of hobby on the side. But I found Krav Maga gets very repetitive very fast, and without the
true.
competitive outlet, a lot of people have issues. One other thing I noticed is, let's say I get a really young athletic student, and I'm teaching a wide range of students in my class, middle-aged people, some athletic people, some not, and I find the really athletic people, they get bored at a faster pace than non-athletic people, because they hear, on the internet, Krav Maga is hardcore. We're gonna kick the shit out of each other, and I'm
Yeah,
like, we can't do that every class, guys, because then you walk away with all the injuries, and then they usually find they want to go do something with a high-level athletic competitive athlete. Like, I have some that do boxing, or they do jujitsu, or they do something, and sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't want to, because they are intrinsically motivated by that feeling they get at the high level competition, and you get the really athletic students, and I have one student, he probably won't mind. He did competitive baseball, right? So he never made it to the major leagues, but he made it just below, so he's naturally athlete and competitive, and he's training with a lot of my other students. He's a big guy, and I'm like, hey, you have nothing to prove. You're like 6 foot something. You're a giant athlete. You don't need to go that hard with some of these other
yeah,
students. He's like,
yeah,
I'm not going hard. I'm like, yes, you are. And then he said to me one day, he said it's because he's used to competing at that high level, and
yeah,
he didn't make it, so he doesn't see himself as that. And then I got him to do jujitsu as well, and he was going with this. He's a white belt, and he was going with this purple belt who's even bigger than him. And the purple belt, I noticed after a while, said, okay, I was just watching them, and the purple belt would just immediately double leg him, take him to the ground, like every single time. And he's a gentle giant normally, and he was just slamming my student to the ground. And I asked him, I was like, so what's going on? He's like, because that guy doesn't know how to dial it down, and I don't want to be stuck on, so I just take him down and end it now.
yeah,
So a lot of students I find with Krav Maga, when they can't get that high level competition, they're just like, I'm bored. I want to do
yeah.
something else. I don't know if that's the same for you guys, because you've been doing this probably longer than me, I imagine. Um, but I mean, that psychological aspect, other than the business side, because a lot of people, they want the money, but it's that psychology of they get bored, or the fear. I find some people get hurt once and then they're scared, but I think that's generic to all martial arts rather than
Yeah,
Krav
yeah,
Maga.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I think it's the people factor, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, we do have our classes are pretty intense. They
Yeah.
we always have sparring. We always have pad work. They always
Yeah.
go out and they're half dead at the end of the class, and we try to we always try to bring something new. I mean, we keep it, the way we want it to be, and we still keep the traditional. We changed a few things to
Mm.
to match our reality, but we still keep the Krav Maga techniques as they are. But we just kind of mix things up. Okay, so we're gonna do a lot of simulations. We're gonna do pad work, and while you're working on the pad, someone is going to attack you, and we're gonna mix a few things up just to make it a little more interesting. So that's how
Mm.
we kind of create this. A kind of a situation where people do want to come back and they do enjoy the sparring part. But as you said, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe in here, when someone chooses to go to Krav Maga, they understand that there are no competitions, so they're
Mm.
not non-competitive persons, people, in their basics. So they don't really seek for it. So they know how to tone it down when they're working with someone who's lower rank, and how to, you know, hit harder or go
Yeah.
all the way when we're working with someone who's higher ranked or bigger than them.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of nice. I keep telling them that as well. I mean, it's great that you know how to work as hard as you can, but it's also great to know how to tone it down and
Mm.
control yourself and work in front of someone who's smaller than you or new to the class, and kind of like work on your technique, work on your accuracy. So I can definitely say that my students understand that, and
Mm.
they really like it. They really like this sparring part. They really like the intense work that we do during our classes. um, I did have a few students, but that's mainly teenagers who left because they wanted
Yeah.
the competition aspect. So
Yeah.
they kind of started doing other things, but I respect that. That's okay, no
Yeah.
problem. I'm not a competitive person myself, so
Yeah.
when I was a kid and I was in judo, I just couldn't stand it because I was a really strong kid, and the reason I left was because over there you got categories, you got weight categories and everything, and I was always heavy and
Mm.
always strong and always I was dense. So so they kept putting me. I was 5 or 6 years old, and they put me with a 10-year-old kid because I was crazy. And
Mm.
what can I do with a 10-year-old kid if I'm 6 years old? I mean, I kept losing. So because he's better at the techniques and he's taller than me, and so we weigh the same. So what? And I was frustrated about it, and I said, no, I don't like that. And when
Yeah.
I joined Krav, and I realized that it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're tall, if you're short, if you're heavy, if you're not, you use what you have. The tools you have are your hands and your legs, and just use them wisely.
Mm.
So I love that. I
I mean,
absolutely love that.
and to be fair, I think judokins are crazier than Krav people, like getting tossed on your head.
Yeah,
Like I
I
do
guess so.
done a
I
little
hate
bit, but
falling. I
yeah,
hate falling. I hate falling. I hate it. So I
yeah,
don't know how to do it. I don't know.
yeah.
No
That
idea.
that actually brings up one of the other sort of interesting is aspects of Krav Maga is how do you guys integrate sort of the grappling or the judo? So, like my approach, for example, well, first I should say when I started Krav Maga, I didn't know anything about grappling because the organization that I was with was like, no, no ground. And then
Hmm.
with the the popularity of grappling, and I realized like I started doing jujitsu and then I did a seminar with a woman who's about your size, but she's like world champion, and I just watched her like destroy men black belts like one after another. And I was just like, wow, if somebody that good gets a hold of you on the ground, I'm screwed. So,
Yeah.
and then I had that sort of crisis is like, how do we teach this without losing the Krav Maga? So my strategy is I introduce grappling a little bit at the
Great.
middle levels. Just here's the positions, here's where you don't want to be, here's how you get up, what's your strategy? And then I tell people, if you want to get a black belt from me in Krav, you have to go do grappling somewhere else, whether it be
Good.
jujitsu or judo or wrestling, because I have to teach you so much stuff. If I spend all the time on grappling, we're not doing Krav Maga. So I need to see that you're open minded and will train something else comparatively. Like if you did high school wrestling your whole time, I'd be like, hey, that's good enough. Or if you get a
Hmm.
blue belt in jiu-jitsu, which could take you the whole couple
Yeah.
years, I'll be like, good. Now you like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu is usually sufficient enough with Krav Maga to hold off even a high level grappler. So how do you guys approach that integration of that stuff without becoming a grappling class?
I actually really like the way you work, because the main reason I went out and I did the jiu-jitsu was because I felt like there's not enough grappling and not enough groundwork in Krav Maga. And I really do think that we need to incorporate a lot more of these things into our classes. And it's difficult because I don't have all the knowledge. I mean, I did
Yeah.
only 1 year, and I was really into it, and I really wanted to reach to a level where I also, well, where I can also do like the instructor's course in
Mm.
jiu-jitsu, and then combine it, and even put it into our grading tests, as you said, even letting them learn a few of the basic positions, and how do you get out of it, and how do you control your opponent, what do you do if someone is better than you on the ground. um, because it is important, because a lot of people do know how to work on the ground, and
Mm.
crowd people don't. We only kick. When we get to the ground, as you said, people say don't fall, don't get to the ground. If you're on the ground, then end of
Yeah.
story. And it
Yeah.
can't be that way, because we're supposed to give you a solution to everything. I mean, we're self-defense. Nobody can tell me that I can't fall down. There's no such thing. What if I
Yeah.
did fall down? And so I'm definitely working on um, maybe even changing a little bit of the syllabus, and putting some grappling and some groundwork into it.
Mm.
And I'm still trying to figure out a way to do it without getting any more injuries
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But there are a few things that I did incorporate, and I did change few techniques, because I saw amazing, just small moves in jiu-jitsu that I said, oh my God, this is totally changing the technique, that I need to embrace that, and use that in certain things. And the students do feel the difference. So yeah, I really want to get to a point where I manage to incorporate somehow into my classes as well. And it's super important, super
Yeah.
important. That's what I said
Yeah.
about the Krav Maga being dynamic. I do think that we as Krav Maga instructors need to change the way we teach and the way we look at things. And if more people are doing MMA and Jiu-Jitsu, then we should try to think how to deal with these people as well. So we need to go out there and try Jiu-Jitsu and try grappling, and whatever we can to enrich our world, and be able to deal with these people as well.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of Krav Maga. It's not, as I said, it's not traditional as karate. You can't go this way or this way. You have to go that way.
Yeah.
Um, so great job. Really, yeah, I really
Working
like
on
the way
it.
you
Yeah.
think. I really like the way you do. Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
a difficult process. Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's
it's for me. What I found is I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'6". I don't do the meters thing. Um, I'm 160 pounds. I'm not athletic. I've never been athletic, and I always had instructors who were just like naturally gifted athletes or huge. And I found in the self-defense world, not just Krav Maga, but self-defense, a lot of instructors are big
yeah,
guys.
I know. Yeah,
And they'd be teaching stuff, and I'm like, I cannot do that. It does not work for
it
me.
does not work,
And
right?
the classic, you're just not doing it right. I'm like, no, physics, man. I just cannot do that. And I started
Right,
finding I had to what does work for a smaller person. And then sometimes I'd be taught a new technique by an organization or instructor. They do it perfectly, and I'm like, I actually can do the technique just fine. But then I start teaching it to the students, and I'm like, this is a high level technique, and if I can't get a middle aged woman to kind of be able to do it, I'm like, I don't think that
right.
should be something I'm teaching.
Yeah,
If people want to do stuff on the side, that's no problem. But some techniques people take out of their curriculum because like this doesn't work. But then I'm watching the small people, I'm like, but it actually they need that technique because it works against bigger people. A lot of the like groin strike, elbow stuff,
yeah,
some organizations have taken that out because they're like, it's not practical. But then I've watched small people get stuck with their arms pinned, and that's their only option. And I'm like, I don't know why they would take it out because the big guys, I guess, they just like muscle out. And that's I find that is a really challenging for, especially with so many instructors who have not been doing it for 10, 15 years or don't have a
right.
wide
Yeah,
variety. They just randomly either take stuff in or take stuff out, and they don't really know the why. And then they
yeah,
have trouble justifying it. And then you're like, why'd you take that out? And they're like, well, because it doesn't work. Consequently, I've done some self-defense seminars with really well-known martial artists. They're not self-defense people, and they're teaching a technique, and I'm like, that is not going to work. And they're like, of course it works. And then I see what's going on is their demonstrated student is complying every time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I know that doesn't work, man. I'm not going to tell them that, like, but
Yeah.
it's just that ability to integrate techniques from one style into a self-defense curriculum without it becoming something else is such a hard skill, and I just find a
Yes.
lot of
Yeah.
people cannot do it very well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I can tell you that after we split, after we I mean the Krav Maga Haim Zut organization was a really big organization, and then just one day everything fell apart,
Mm,
and a lot of big instructors just kind of we all split up, and each and every one of us opened their own organization, and as part of this, the first thing we did was to sit with the syllabus, with the curriculum, and start thinking, okay, what can we take, what can we just ditch and leave, and what can we add to the curriculum, and we've changed a few things,
mm,
and just because we actually thought that a few things did not work, and maybe it was good for 40 years ago, but
mm,
today it won't work, and we still keep doing that. That's why I keep saying Krav Maga it's not the same as it was. I know that there are some instructors who insist on doing the Krav Maga the way it was 70 years ago. Okay, but we have to
right.
adapt to the reality. And here in Israel, it happens really fast. You've got new kind of attacks. It's, all of a sudden, people run outside with knives or whatever, and you have to find out how you have to figure out how to deal with these situations as fast as you can. And so I do think it has to be dynamic. I do think you have to once in a while you have to stop everything and then just say to yourself, okay, I have to change a few things, I have to add a few things, I have to push aside a few things, or even decide that certain things are good for maybe this person, and certain things are good for this person. So I'm going to have like two versions of this technique, and I'm
Mm,
going to explain to my students why this is good, and why when am I going to use this, and when am I going to use that.
mm,
So that's basically what we do over here.
yeah,
I mean, it's still Krav Maga, it's
yeah.
still self-defense. There are a lot of techniques that are the same as other, Krav Maga organizations, but there are a few touch-ups, a few
Mm,
things that we've added. And the the really, I feel this especially when I go outside of Israel and I do like seminars in Europe. For example, I mean, I haven't done that many, but this year I was in Spain and I was in France, and I just teach them whatever I do. I mean, I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm teaching you the things that I do. And all of a sudden you see that a few fine tuning, just a little bit of fine tuning, and so all of a sudden the person looks at you and his eyes just open up and he goes like, oh my God, this technique is totally different than what I mean, I didn't believe in this technique, and all of a sudden it works because I understand better, because your leg was here instead of here, so this time it worked, or
yeah.
so you have to change a little. You have to adapt to the reality. And as you said, I do think that grappling and groundwork has to be part of Krav Maga,
Yeah.
and it has to happen fast.
Yeah.
and
It's
so I
because
really appreciate it that you've done that, and I really appreciate it that you send your student out there to learn these things. I think it's amazing.
yeah, I mean, well, that's part of it comes from what it's just my history is like when I started, I had a business partner and they were the martial artists more than me.
Mm,
They were uh more physically gifted than me. And so I kind of relied on that, but as is with a lot of things, and I was like I would say I was the better proficient Krav Maga instructor for
mm-hmm,
whatever reason, but we had a falling out as Krav Maga happens, and I got stuck. Not stuck. I mean, I chose with the school, and I'm like, shit, my skill level is not where it really needs to be in order to be running a school. So I had to look around and see what can I learn. Grappling, I picked up grappling. Like I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu now,
oh
and
wow.
I do seminars in with I did a like a Jeet Kune Do Dan and a Santos seminar. Let's see what these people are teaching, and even if it's just once or here or do boxing seminar, and you just see, okay, what are they teaching that I like,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a teaching methodology. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
like say for Krav Maga, I go to you go learn Krav Maga with other people. I don't know what it's like for you. And I'm like, you're not teaching me anything new, or I don't really think you know what you're doing. Or sometimes if I see everyone's doing the same thing, I'm like, either that technique really works or they're just teaching it for the sake of teaching it, and you have to figure
Yeah.
out which is what.
Yeah.
Or sometimes like I was, like most Krav Maga people, never go to the ground, and it was in my head. I wouldn't teach those techniques, and then I was training with someone I learned under, Amit Himmelstein, if
Yeah.
you know him, and he did wrestling Sanshao in China, and his approach, I mean, he's amazing as a wrestler, but it's just he was teaching this one technique, where if you sort of get grabbed, you take your leg behind them and you drop them to the ground, kind of like with the people's elbow, if you will.
Yeah. 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 With
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
and it's a technique I'd seen before, and I had just always been told never, never do that, never do that, never go to the ground. It's stupid, and I started playing around with that technique with my students, and I was like, I ended up putting it in my curriculum. And the reason was, again, the small people. If the small
Yeah.
person is with a much bigger person, all the other stuff fails. And then they would always panic and drop them to the ground and get on top. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm using that technique then. So all the conventional wisdom about never go to the ground, I'm like, again, if you're big, you can stay on your feet. But if you're little, you need to take away, that's the whole where the Gracies came from, was you need to take away the advantage of the physics, of generating
Hmm.
power on the feet. Now, of course, if they're a grappler too, you have a problem, and that's where you need to
Right.
have
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
skill. But the reality is, the average person who's in a self-defense situation is probably not a high-level grappler. So when you drop them to the ground, they're going to be caught off guard real fast. Their head will hit the concrete, and as long as that person who does the technique knows to scramble right away and get up, then it's a very effective technique. But I've been told my whole time, don't do that, don't do it. It's a terrible technique. But it works actually. I use stuff like that in jiu-jitsu as well. So if it works in against other grapplers, then it's like, well, it works.
I find it weird that they told you it's not working. I mean, I was when I had my black belt test, they tested me on this
Yeah.
particular technique. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it could be, I
So
mean, some of the original organizations I was with, I just never got to the grappling component because,
yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
or some of the other instructors, I know they hate the ground. So they're just like, don't do it because they don't like it. They don't like to teach it. And when it gets to the ground stuff, it would be like, hey, we're doing a ground stuff, 20 minutes. And then everyone is terrible. And I'm like choking everyone out. And it's like, well, we have a problem, guys. So
Every
it's,
time I have a training camp, I tell them, okay, guys, you know what? We are going to do an hour and a half as part of this training camp. An hour and a half is going to be dedicated to groundwork, to
mm,
grappling and groundwork, things that I remember from jiu-jitsu. They
yeah,
absolutely love it.
yeah,
And then we do some sparring, and then I tell them, okay, go to the ground. And they
yeah,
love it. They enjoy every minute of it. And then you see how it builds them as different, fighters than they were before. And
yeah.
it gives them some, an extra confidence. And that's the most important thing for me. I want my students to be confident. I want them to go out there and understand, as you said, and know that whatever they learn, they can use it. It
Yeah.
works. If someone is doubting a certain technique, then either that technique doesn't work, or I did a really bad job at explaining this technique. Maybe
Mm,
you didn't understand it. So I have to say that I keep checking myself. We keep checking ourselves. It's not just me, it's my coach as well. We
mm,
keep checking ourselves all the time, all the time, all the time. And when I see that a certain technique is not working for 2, 3, 4, 5 students, then something is not okay. I mean, this technique might not work. We may need to extract it and not use it anymore, and maybe change it a little bit. And that's what we do. And I think it's okay. I think it's
mm,
okay
yeah.
as
Well,
long as it works, as
yeah,
long as it's effective. Then why not?
yeah. Well, like when I'm testing, I tell my students, like, there's a technical portion. I want you to show me you do know the curriculum. But when it comes to all
Yeah.
the pressure testing, I'm like, follow the principles, don't, die
Right.
and you're fine. Like
Yeah,
just go
yeah,
through it.
yeah. That's the same. I like it because we kind of I like you. I like the way you think, and I like the way
Yeah.
you act, because that's exactly what I do. I mean, I do test them, and there is the curriculum, and then we hit to a certain point where I tell them, okay, now you're going to stand still, and your partner is going to walk around you, and he's going to attack however he wants.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care what you do. I don't
Yeah.
care. I'm putting down the pencil, and I'm putting down a pen in my pad. I'm not touching anything. I'm not writing down anything. I just want to see you react
Yeah.
and see you use it, react wisely. I don't want you to get stressed. I don't want you to freeze. I just want you to react. I mean, if
Mm.
you're hitting him in the stomach, or your kicks are flying everywhere, but they're not accurate, then dude, you're not okay. But if you are using the techniques, if you are doing the right things, then that's great. That means that you are a true Krav Maga fighter.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. That's the most important thing. They're not
Yeah.
going to remember how many,
Yeah.
they're not going to remember how to, someone's going to choke me. I'm not going to do the exact same technique. Come on, things are different out there. I know. I volunteer in the police here in Israel, and I've seen violent situations,
Mm.
and it's nothing like what we've got in
Yeah.
classes. But we do have an amazing amount of knowledge that is good for us.
Mm.
I mean, I can give you one example. I mean, how we got this cavalier, these takedown techniques where you use the hand, you twist the wrists and everything.
Mm.
And I have to say that in the Israeli police, they teach Krav Maga, but it's not exactly what the police officers need.
Mm.
And during the COVID pandemic, when it was really, really, just the beginning of it, and we were on lockdown, I used to go out and I did a lot of shifts in the police just to breathe some fresh air and go out of the house. So it was my excuse to,
Yeah.
leave the house. I was all by myself on the road. I was just driving to the police station. I was like, I'm the only car outside,
Yeah.
but it was great, crazy. So there were a few holidays back then, and
Mm.
parties were forbidden. And during one of the holiday, we actually stopped a party where teenagers were, and they all drank a lot of alcohol, and they were all drunk, and they were crazy, crazy kids, awful kids. And one of them hit an officer,
Mm.
a high-ranked officer, by the way. So, and then it kind of developed to a huge fight. And three police officers were jumping on him. They were standing in front of him, by the way. They were standing in
Mm.
front of him, and they tried to control him. And the guy was drunk, and he was huge. He was a teenager, but he was huge. He was like 17 or 18, something like that. But he was a giant. And I was standing there, and I was looking at them, and they were just standing in front of him, trying to grab his hands, and he wouldn't let them. So I just stepped behind him, took his hand, twisted down,
Yeah.
put my, kind of swept his legs with my leg.
Mm.
And then next thing I remember, I was sitting on his back, and his hands are in my hands. And I was looking at my partner, and I said, cuff him. They said, what did you do? And I said, I was working with my head without,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get him. I'm not going to stand in front of him. He's hitting everyone. I'm not going to stand in front of him when he's just throwing his fists and his kicks in the air. I'm going to be smarter than that.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I mean, we have to use what works. We have to be smart. We have to use our knowledge the best way we can. And as you said, I mean, I want my students to know the curriculum, but I also want them to know how to get out of a situation where things go wrong.
Yeah.
And we,
So,
we work on that a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
They love it.
Yeah. Problem solving. It's because I want to talk about a whole bunch of things that you brought up because I want to get into the policing thing in a sec. But I don't know if you were aware, I served in the IDF like 10 years ago. I was
Really?
just like an idiot.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I'm
Respect.
gonna go over to Israel and do that.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was in Givati for almost 2 years,
Wow.
and for me, it was not the best experience, and I
Of
talk
course
about
not.
it because I have, aside from it being the military, the IDF is very difficult for those who don't know, and
For most people, it's
yeah,
not such an exciting and fun
no,
experience, by the way.
no,
There
and
are very, very few people who love their
yeah,
this
yeah,
experience, especially when
uh,
you're 18 and you just got out of high school, and the last thing that interests you is to put on, an M16 and run in the ditches and, and
yeah.
shoot other people and and
Well, it's
sleep in the cold.
interesting because, I mean, as I went when I was 22, actually, so I was older, which makes it even harder to deal with the little kids
Yeah,
fresh
you
out of
got
high
little
school.
kids running around.
Um,
Your
but
commander is younger than you. Yeah.
yeah, I was even older than some of the lieutenants, and they usually left me
Yeah.
alone because they're like, you've been to like some college and stuff, and whatever, you do whatever." Um, but it's for me. One, I'm not Israeli. I didn't grow up there. My parents are not Israeli, so there's a bit of
Hmm.
culture shock for me. My Hebrew, I have no Hebrew anymore because I had to learn it on the fly when I was there.
Oh,
But I learned some valuable lessons from it. It did ended up enhancing my Krav Maga because I understand military and I understand the
that's
firearm
great.
stuff now.
That's great.
But one of the most valuable lessons that I actually got out of it was the people that you think are going to perform under stress often do not. And the
That's true.
people who you would never think perform well under stress perform really well. Like
That's true.
the Spitzim, the guys who are like
Yeah.
checking all the
Yeah.
boxes, getting promoted really fast. And then we had this one exercise. I was in between wars, and we were after they changed all the training after Lebanon too. And one of the exercises we did was the full regiment exercise, and they took away our food for like
Yeah.
4 days, 3 or 4 days, because it happened in Lebanon, and they kept lying as they do. Oh, the food's coming, the food's coming. And, by the second and a half day, you started to see all these, Spitzim who were like the best students fall apart mentally. They just could not handle it. And
Yeah.
for me, the entire experience was miserable. So I was like, this is no different than any other day for me. And it just, I had
I'm
this
just hungry. That's all.
yeah, I had this wake up call and just watching people that I thought were good leaders fall
Hmm.
apart, and then watch who actually did well under those things, and it was a valuable lesson um for me because I'm like, like you will only know who can really perform when you push them to their limits and take things away from them.
True.
You
Yeah.
know, and I tell my students, unfortunately, the only way you're gonna know how you're gonna really perform is you have to be experiencing violence, which don't go look for. But that's the sad thing about it is you really don't know until you know, and a lot of people,
I,
I just don't know how are they gonna
I
perform.
I think it's also how you mentally grasp your ability to handle the situation. I mean, I think that people who are certain that they will always be able to, you know, handle any kind of violent situation are those who are going to go down in a real situation. And if you
Yeah.
still have that small doubt in your head that keeps you alert all the time, and then you're going to perform well. I mean,
Mm,
because if you walk around, you're like, nobody's going to mess with me. I can deal with whatever you throw at me. Then you're going to go down because you're like I don't know. You don't even have the I don't even know how to put it in words, but I think that if you're always doubting yourself, and you understand that there is a slight it's a slight chance, maybe not even a slight chance, maybe even it's a 50-50 chance that you won't be able to deal with this person and that you will get hurt and that maybe things are going to go wrong, then you're going to perform better.
mm,
Because you're not really, it's not that you're not believing in yourself, but you're also not living under the illusion that you're going to be able to deal with everyone. And
mm,
I can tell you that, in my, well, I can share with you that sometimes, my worst nightmares are that people, I actually dream about it every now and then, that people are attacking me and I don't know what to do and I can't
mm,
do anything. And every time I wake up after one of these dreams, I'm like, I mean, it's okay because
mm,
maybe one day it will happen, but I always have to remember that sometimes that when I go out there and if God forbid something like this happens, then there is a slight chance that I won't make it, that I won't survive this. So I think that having this in your subconscious all the time makes you fight harder and makes you see things differently and makes you perform differently, I think.
mm.
um, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
When you're not always sure that you're going to win, that you're going to survive,
yeah.
And I always have this doubt every time I see, like, every time I enter, some kind. It sounds like I always enter a violent situation. It sounds like I
Yeah.
keep looking for trouble wherever I go. But
Yeah.
no, but every time, even when we were sparring, it doesn't matter
Mm.
who stands in front of me and what his ranking is. I always keep telling myself he might hit me.
Yeah.
It might not work what I want, because sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm not focused, and I'm not always standing in front of people and bragging and showing off.
Yeah.
So I think it's also a perception kind of thing. I think it's how you see things mentally that
Yeah, it's
affects your performance.
the human factor. Do you know who John Danaher is by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing jiu-jitsu coach. I was fortunate enough to do a lesson with him once. Um, but he said something on an interview. It was like one of the reasons his guys are so successful in competition is it's how he's training them. He noticed because the guy's like he used to be a philosophy professor at NYU, so the guy's like a deep thinker.
Mm,
Whoops. One sec. And he was saying that a lot of people in competition, this jiu-jitsu competition, are trying so hard not to lose, they
right.
don't win. And so one of the things that he did was if he's teaching new people, he teaches them all the worst positions first, like being on the bottom, and get them psychologically comfortable with that position. And then he drills them constantly so that they're comfortable getting out of the worst position so that in competition they don't have a problem giving up position to go for
Hmm.
a risky submission because they know even if they screw it up they're comfortable in a bad position and can get out. Now that is obviously competition. You don't want to intentionally put yourself in a bad position in life or death, but that sort of
But you should be
mindset,
prepared. Yeah, you
yeah,
should be prepared. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
so that
Yeah.
you're not like panicked. "Oh, I'm going to end up in a bad position," and
Right.
then you screw up, and then you don't know what to do, and now you're panicked again. And I
Yeah,
think
that's right.
pre-COVID, I competed jujitsu, um, and I think I was doing that. I was trying not to lose, and in my last big competition, I made a mental shift. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I couldn't. But it made a huge difference in just how I'm doing jujitsu. Is stop trying just to lose, not lose, and to try to actually progress and win, and don't worry about where you are, and then you find better ways to solve those problems. But that mental game, whether it be in literal self-defense, which is way harder, or
Mhm.
competition, is it's I think that's the thing that people struggle with often the most because it's easy to learn the techniques, but
Right.
combining it with strategy and the mental headspace, that's a whole nother game, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
So how do you guys approach that? Because I know, uh, well, I tend to be very intellectually inclined, so I like to talk about the psychology and the concepts and a little bit of philosophy. But I
Hmm.
know there's an attitude in Krav Maga, particularly amongst a lot of Israelis. They're like, no talking, just punching. Like we don't have no one's here to pay you to listen to you talk. But I'm like, but they need to understand.
There's a
So
lot of philosophy and a lot of psychology going
yeah,
into our classes all the time. And sometimes I've got classes, especially teen classes, when the teenagers are in and they have a lot of questions. And I don't mind. I mean, I let them ask questions. We can spend like 7, 8, 9 minutes, which is a lot from the session, just on talking and answering questions. And I think it really builds them. I think it's really important. I want them to understand. I want them to build a state of mind, and I do want them to understand you can call it philosophy behind Krav Maga, and the psychology that goes into it. It is important to me. It's very important to me, and we work on it all the time. We do it a lot. We do a lot of talking during the classes. I'm not saying that we only talk. We work, but if there's a question or a doubt, or or I need to stop and explain to them what happens when they are in a stressful situation and how the mind works and how the body works, then we're going to do that. And they're asking questions and they want to understand, they want to know. And I think it's very important. I think it's a huge part of understanding Krav Maga. It's inseparable. You can't separate it from classes. You can't just keep them, learning techniques and not having not understanding the psychology behind uh, dealing with a violent situation. What happens to you when someone attacks you? It's important. And again, I do it not only with the teenagers and the adults. I do it with the kids as well. We
Mm.
have entire conversations of what happens to your body when you get stressed, when you get hit, when you freeze. How do you get out of it? What do you do? And we play around with it all the time. We talk about it
Mm.
all the time, and it's really important. They really, and I feel like it's actually even making them love it even more,
Mm.
feeling more connected to it, because they understand the depth. They get like another level of understanding to the Krav Maga techniques.
Yeah.
So so I do think it's important, and we do
Yeah.
it all the time. We do it all the
Yeah.
time.
That's good. Like, cause Krav Maga, like, I get a lot of people who come in and they hate when I'm talking, and they don't like it. Granted, I say things that people don't always like, cause I'm in a very left-leaning city talking about violence and the reality of the world, and they don't like
Yeah,
it,
it's
cause I said,
different. I know it's
and
different.
they had in their head that all they're gonna do is kick the shit out of each other, and here I'm talking about psychology or a world event that has impacted people, and they're like, "Why are you talking about this?" And for me, it's like self-defense. The classic Emil Lichtenfeld quote, "So one may walk in peace," and I'm like, that includes your mental health. That includes
Right.
not getting overwhelmed by COVID. Like, so I'll talk about the up-to-date science in class sometimes because I want my students not to get overwhelmed mentally because I'm looking at people who are like they're losing their shit because of what's going on in the world, and I'm like, listen, if you understand what's going on politically and scientifically and this, you'll actually calm down because now
Right.
it's not confusing to you. Or I don't always do that, but the idea that self-defense is so much more than the techniques, and I feel like Krav Maga has a bad image globally that if it's not punching and killing, we don't do talking, and it just throws people off when they come in, and it just happens to be a class where I want to talk about combat philosophy, or hey, this thing just happened and I want you guys to understand it a little better, like last year, the George Floyd thing. Nobody
Hmm.
wanted to talk
Yeah.
about it, and personally, I found even use of force experts were just parroting what they heard in the media because they didn't want to offend people, and I wanted to actually break down what, like, a case study, what actually happened, and I would say stuff that people find offensive, and I'm like, well, is your opinion just what you heard in the media? Because I'm teaching use of force. And I have a classic story. For example, I was at a party, I was drunk, this small girl started throwing bottles and smashing shit, and I ended up having to take her down, and I had put my knee on her neck because she was violent,
Hmm.
and she went to sleep, and I lifted my knee up, and she woke back up, started swinging again. I just put it down gently, and she fell asleep, and I did this for about 20 minutes till the cops came and arrested her. And I'm like, listen, I have done that drunk out of my mind to a girl half my size, and there were no problems. So
Right.
objectively, if you know how to do those techniques, you can do them. The problem is most people don't know how to do them, and there is a difference.
Right.
And nobody wanted to have that conversation. The amount of like hate I was getting from people for even suggesting that that technique should not actually be banned. People just need to know how to do it properly. I mean, the details of that case aren't great, but just people didn't want to have that conversation. And to me, that's part of self-defense. Is we're talking use of force. Is it actually a good technique, or are we just saying it's not because everyone's yelling at us about it? And
Right.
I found it's because everyone's got this image of Krav Maga. You get the new student who comes in and is like, "Why is he talking about this? This is offensive." I'm like, "You might have to do it. I did it once. Like, you need to understand this stuff." So, what are your thoughts on sort of that, talking about things beyond the class? Like,
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
definitely. I mean, unfortunately, here you have so many cases, so many things that happen, and you all, these days social media works amazing, and
yeah,
you get videos from you know, in Israel, especially in Jerusalem, you got cameras all over the place. So whenever there's anything happening, you immediately get a video of whatever happened, and
Yeah,
we talk
especially
about these
Israel.
things, especially Israel, especially Jerusalem. But yeah, I do like talking to them about even mistakes that police officers do. You know,
Mm,
there's this one video. I don't know if you've seen it. It was ooh, shut up. It was a few years back. There was this soldier, not soldier, police officer in somewhere in Jerusalem. They arrested this guy, and he was sitting down
mm.
on
Pretty sure I've seen that one. Yeah.
where the where the police officer comes to him and he asks for his ID, and
Mm,
the guy just puts his hands in his pockets. Nobody is securing him. Nobody
yeah.
searched him, and he just pulled a knife out and he grabs the police officer by the shoulder and he starts stabbing him.
Yeah.
Now the police officer was so close to him, so
Yeah.
close to him, and he didn't search him. He was not cuffed, nothing. So that was a mistake when it comes to
Yeah.
self-defense and you're standing in front of someone. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
That's a serious mistake. So we talk about these things as well. I mean,
Mm,
I keep telling them you want to survive, and I talk about with all my students about these things because it is important for me that they will understand that you know you see things happening, and maybe you know even a police officer who is you know for kids, for example, he's a person that they're sure that he's doing his job and he knows what he's doing all the time. He makes mistakes,
yeah.
and when it comes to self-defense, even someone who seems to be very you know like a person whose entire world is the entire job is security, even
Mm,
he's not perfect. Even
mm,
he didn't understand the meaning of you know what self-defense is all about, what you have to do in order to prevent this kind of thing. So
mm.
um I love it's terrible to say that I love these kind of videos, but I do love these kind of videos
Yeah.
because I keep analyzing these videos and then I show them to my students and I keep asking them, what did you learn from this? Where
Mm,
is the mistake? What could have, what would you do if you were, you know, in this
mm,
situation? So, and then we talk about it. We analyze it together. We ask questions. We bring up, we're brainstorming. We're bringing up ideas.
mm.
It helps them understand things. It helps them, you know,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I think I know you're the video. There's a guy sitting on like a wall and there's a bunch
Yeah,
of
a
soul.
small
Yeah.
wall, and then
Yeah.
there are a lot of police officers around him, and one of
Yeah.
them is just you know standing in front of him, standing very close to him.
Yeah.
I hate it when they do it, and unfortunately it still happens. I can still see it
Yeah.
happening, even you know not in Jerusalem, outside of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm always amazed in all the Israeli videos where in that situation there was so much crossfire of them all just shooting him. How they didn't
yeah,
shoot each other, it is a testament to the shooting training in Israel that they
yeah.
didn't
Well,
crossfire each other. And I'm like, I
definitely
first they should not be crossfiring, but you know, they don't get friendly fire hits that often and compared to if that had been in America with the police, I guarantee you they would have shot each other. And so there's that. But I take videos like that, you know, because I did infantry. I do have some understanding. People will show those videos, and these soldiers are they don't react well when someone sneak attacks them or whatever. Now, a couple things you almost always notice is that if there's a knife, without fail, the soldier throws their arm up, you know, 360 style. So I'm like, see,
right, yeah,
that's where that comes from. But
right,
then I remind people, I'm like, listen, he's probably on like 4 hours of sleep. They don't actually have that much Krav Maga training unless they're a special
true,
unit. They don't
true,
drill that much. They don't want to be there. They're not really paying attention, the classic complacency, because the way that the Israeli military operates scheduling wise is not like an American or Canadian military. And you're so tired. Like if you, even in Iraq or Afghanistan, the soldiers there would go on like an 8 hour patrol and they'd be off for the rest of the time. And it's like,
right.
no, in Israel, you're on. If you're on base, you're on. There's no off. You could be in kitchen, you could be doing a drill and something could happen. And I'm like, these soldiers are so tired. Unless they drill extensively, which they don't, they're not always going to be on point. Like I knew guys who in the West Bank near Shechem were at nighttime by themselves falling asleep in a security place where just up the road someone got stabbed last week. And I'm like, are you guys out of your minds? You're falling asleep in a place you could get stabbed because it happened last week. And that's the reality is you got these 18-year-old kids who
True.
are
Yeah. Yeah.
tired, don't want to be there. And that's sort of that psychology is like, are you thinking about sleep deprivation? Like I tell my students, like I mean, I could if you sign a waiver, but I can't take away your sleep, and I'm not going
True.
to take away your food for 3 days unless you're paying me for a week-long course. So the only way I can really stress test you is make you physically exhausted. But it's like I
True.
need you to understand that if you haven't slept for 3 days, you haven't eaten, how you react is going to be radically different. And getting people to understand that sometimes I find it's a bit tough if you've never really been in that experience.
Yeah. And this kind of yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
because you've done policing and you've had some experiences, I found initially, because Krav Maga is traditionally so heavy striking focus, I found adapting Krav Maga for policing was always very difficult. I think I've kind of got my groove now, but how have you approached that? Because some things legally you're gonna get in a lot of trouble if you do as a
yeah. You
police
can't
officer.
you can't just
Yeah,
do whatever you want. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
You're pretty restricted when I mean you can't do a lot of things, but you do need to control the person
yeah.
in front of you with minimum damage. And yes, this is very difficult,
Mm,
but it's amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing. It keeps you sharp all the time. You keep thinking, how am I going to do? How am I going to control him without hitting him? I
Mm,
mean, you do have situations where you've got no choice. I mean, if someone's going to hit me, I'm not really going to stand aside and not hit him back. I don't care, even if I'm going to go for a trial.
yeah.
But when someone is just throwing his hand in the air and pushing other police officers, you're not allowed to touch a police officer here. Okay, you're not allowed to touch. Okay, if
Mm,
you touch a police officer, then I mean we're not as violent as I mean it's kind of weird to say it, but police officers here are not as violent as I wish they would be.
mm,
I mean I think the entire police has to change their way, because people aren't afraid of police officers over here. They don't
mm,
respect police officers, and they're not
mm,
afraid. They're not afraid
mm,
of anything.
yeah.
And police officers are really restricted because you're not allowed to do anything. You can't
Mm,
shoot anyone,
mm,
and even if you do shoot, then you're undergoing an investigation, and they're gonna ask you, why did you shoot him? And you can say, oh my, he was running towards me with a knife.
mm,
Okay, so why did you shoot him? Why didn't you defend yourself?
mm,
So this is my defense. I'm supposed to let him go near me.
mm,
I need to shoot him. I got a gun. Whatever. No, you need to use a taser. You need to
yeah.
defend. So, but it's totally different. I have I'm always looking at people, thinking. I mean, even especially if they're huge people, I keep
Yeah.
thinking, okay, how am I going to control this guy?
Mm,
But as a Krav Maga practitioner, I have to say that this is very interesting. I mean, you go out and you don't know what you're gonna meet, you don't know what you're gonna do, and what's going to happen. Even especially at night shifts, especially during weekends. And every person you meet is like potentially dangerous, and because you don't really know what's going on in his head. And it's amazing how my head is always constantly, the wheels are constantly turning, and I keep thinking, okay, how am I going to control this guy? What am I going to
mm,
do to control this guy if things escalate, if things are going to go, you know, um, and turn to the worst. So, but
mm.
but yeah, so it's difficult. It's pretty
Yeah.
difficult.
It's
I'm not a police officer I mean, I am by definition, but I'm not on the payroll, so I'm
mm,
not exactly as the police officer. I'm a volunteer, so
yeah.
if I do something that is not so kosher,
Yeah.
they're not gonna put me on trial. I'll probably get like they're
Reprimand,
probably
yeah.
gonna ask me a few questions,
Yeah.
unless I really do, if unless I go crazy, right?
Mm,
But I still keep thinking, how am I going to do it under the restrictions, under the strict,
yeah.
behavior code?
But it's interesting you say that because, like, when I'll tell, I tell my students a lot of the times, I'm like, you know what real knife self-defense in Israel is? I'm like, they're probably getting shot by somebody in 30 seconds. I mean, like if they're really attacking somebody.
Yeah.
And I was like, the just general public will be like, oh, they were charging them with a knife, whatever. Versus in North America, they'll be like, how dare you use the gun? So like Israel is very bureaucratic, and if you've been in Israel, it's like it's bureaucratic to the point where it's ridiculous. But in the end, it's usually just because of bureaucracy. I,
Right.
I
True.
don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think. I think police in Israel are still more likely to use violence if they need to because the general
True.
public is more used to it versus here it's like the cops are so restricted. Now I'm in Canada, so they have a different approach to policing. Like for me, I'm not a police officer, but for me, if you have a sidearm, you should be pulling that out as your last resort. In America, they'll pull it out as a threat. And it's like, I
Hmm.
think that's where they
Right.
go
Yeah.
wrong a lot. You're pulling it out as a threat. It's like, no, no, no. You're pulling that out because you're going to use it. So if the situation doesn't warrant you using it, you shouldn't have pulled it out. So in Canada, they don't draw their guns nearly as often as the Americans do because they're told, like, listen, you don't do it. The training here is still not good enough, but it's better than the training in the States as a general rule. They are taught more other things like use your words, and they actually give them some training here. Now, though the consensus is in North America, the training is still garbage. But then you have to ask yourself, why does the Americans have so many more, unwarranted police shootings than other
Yeah.
countries? And it's just the
True.
mentality that they'll draw the gun for everything. Now, Israel, it's like the guy's charging, like almost every video where a guy charges in, you'll see someone eventually probably shoot them if they're not
Yeah.
subdued in like
Definitely. Yeah.
30 seconds. And so it's just a more natural way of being things. Now, us being in Canada, I'm like, guess what? You can't use a gun for basically nothing here. We can have guns. Like I teach people how to use guns and you get their license and stuff, but you basically can't use it for anything other than target shooting and hunting here. You can, like there are if I go in the court cases, there are cases where people have killed someone with a gun, they got
Hmm.
off on self-defense, but that's after a 3-year trial, their whole
Yeah.
life
Sure.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
ruined.
Sure.
So I'm like, you can't do that. And it's like the general public's lack of understanding of violence. Like, listen, if someone's charging at me with a knife, I'm sorry, I would like to shoot them, but
Sure.
I'm unable to in my country. So I either have to run or let them stab other people, or I'm going to have to risk my life to do something. And I think the lack of understanding of how violence works is one of the biggest issues, especially
Yeah.
with social media. Everyone and their mother has an opinion about something they know nothing about, right?
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah. Someone posts a video of an event that happened, and all of a sudden you hear people, everybody's analyzing things, and they don't
Yeah.
really know what happened there. They don't really actually know what's going on, and you
Yeah.
can't really understand what's going on inside of a person's mind when someone's running towards him, charging him with a knife.
Yeah.
And definitely, I would shoot as well. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
That's the.
But see that's the difference. In Israel, be like, yeah, of course you shoot him. But the cops here
Yeah.
will be like, yeah, I guess I'd shoot him because they've been so conditioned, not to. Um, for me, if they're actively
Wow.
charging, that's warranted. Like in the States, there have actually been some cases where the police officer got beat up and hospitalized, and they said, unfortunately, it's like because they were black and I didn't want to look like a racist, so they let themselves get
Oh.
beat up, and it's like, okay, we have a real real problem here.
Wow.
Yeah. And America's got its own social problems, but I find that a lot of what's going on in America, because they have such a hold on the media globally, it translates into other places
Hmm.
to the point where it's detrimental. Now, I'm glad to hear you like you're still like, yeah, of course I'll shoot him, and it's like, yeah, because he's charging at you with a knife. But I know what goes on in America affects the policies of Israel sometimes because public opinion and switch. And as a smaller guy, I'm like, yeah, as you said in your case, if there's a giant guy, it's like physics says, how am I going to control this person? Like I might have to punch him in the throat, guys.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. It's like, have you like modified anything? Like, have you actually used Krav Maga specifically as a police officer, or have you where you went to go do a technique, you're like, ah, that's a bit much. I need to like modify it.
I
And you,
usually I do modify it.
yeah,
I have modified it, and I have to say that it's not easy because
yeah,
it's way more difficult to control someone when you modify things.
mm,
But on the other hand, I can't just dislocate his shoulder because I want to, because I want to stop him from, I don't know. For there was this guy who we tried to he was mentally unstable, and
mm,
then we were trying to keep him away from this place, and then what he did was he took his hands and he tried to grab my radio. My gun
mm,
is on my left side, so I think he thought it was the gun, and he
mm,
tried to grab my radio. And
mm,
when he did that, I just grabbed his hand and I just twisted his hand behind his back, and and as I twisted it, I said, okay, wait, I have to stop. I mean, the
yeah,
guy is mentally insane, and
yeah,
still I have to, to control myself. But he touched me, he tried to take my stuff, so
mm,
I have to arrest him, I have to stop him somehow. So yeah, it's like you don't really have that much time, you only have like a split of a second to think about these things.
mm,
But I do modify it, but I also know that if the situation is going, to be dangerous, and I feel like there's no way I'm gonna survive unless I do the Krav Maga that I'm used to doing, then I will go full on, and
mm,
you know if there are consequences, that I will, you know
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no problem. I will handle that. But
yeah.
I
So
think it's
it brings up the interesting, like you mentioned, the Cavalier, the classic
yeah,
technique.
that was
Personally,
amazing.
I mean,
I wish
personally,
someone would have filmed it. I don't think there's a video of it. It was so cool.
yeah,
It worked so nicely.
yeah, that's actually like when you end up doing something. Well, it's because I bring up the Cavalier specifically because as the way it's often taught, I don't like it. Where standing and your arms are extended and they do it
Right.
really far away from their body. And I personally, I don't teach that. I don't like that version because to me that's not control when I just have their wrist versus if I have them on the ground, right? That's very different. Now, example, I had a student who ended up in the RCMP here. He actually just got into one of the emergency response teams. So I was like, ah, sweet. But I remember when he came out of the academy and they were teaching just simple wrist locks to get them to comply. And he said to me, like, I can never get this to work. And I'm like, because if the person is resisting the way you're being
Right.
taught, it doesn't work because they just
True.
teach to force it. And that's where I was like, listen, you gotta put some pressure on places in their body that, like maybe the neck, to get them to comply, to relax. Otherwise, it's never gonna work. And I find just the lack of sort of high stress real world training to do with the joint
Yeah.
locks and the wrist locks is why so many people fail at them. Like in jujitsu, for example, I think about maybe purple belt. You get to the point where you're good enough that you can feel when you're training with like a spastic white belt. It's like, hey, dude, you should be tapping right now, and I'm just letting go,
Yeah.
right? But that's like 4 to 6 years of just working that stuff to get the proprioception feel of this is working, it's not working, or there it's working and they don't seem to think it's working. And it's just to get that feeling to realize the joint lock's not working or it's working and I'm going to break something. It just takes the drilling, and a lot of people don't have it. I think they just don't practice it enough under stress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
definitely.
yeah, in your case, probably years of experience, you're like, oh, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, if that
No,
makes
I'm
sense.
telling you, if I had only tried the Cavalier, it wouldn't work.
Yeah,
But what I did was I took his hand. He was, as I said, he was with his back towards me, and I
yeah,
just took his hand. Okay, and I started the Cavalier, and I
mm,
just got him off balance. And once I saw that he was off balance, I used my other leg. I just swept him
yeah,
off his feet,
yeah,
and that's when the Cavalier actually worked. Because,
yeah,
as I said, he was actually going crazy. He was throwing his hands. They tried to grab his hands with both, each hand with two hands, their two hands. So they had two hands on each one of his hands, and he just pulled his hand backwards.
yeah,
And once he did this, and I was behind him, that
yeah,
was my cue. Okay,
yeah,
so I just kept the movement. I just started the Cavalier, and I just took his feet
yeah,
down, and it was It was amazing. I was very happy with it.
Why
I was
wasn't it
just,
on video?
I just kept analyzing what I did,
Yeah.
and but that's a sort of, I mean, they don't teach you how to do that. Okay, it's
Yeah.
not like, it's not part of the curriculum. It's just, you know, you actually use whatever you can, and you just combine things together, and then you react under pressure. And
Yeah.
that's what I want my students to do. And that's part of the reason why I joined the police, was because I actually I know that I have a lot to contribute to the force, and I actually want to feel what it's like out there. I want to see, I want to test myself. I want to see how I react under pressure. I want to see how well Krav Maga is actually, you know, the techniques that I use really are, if it is effective, out there when things happen, when someone attacks me.
Mm.
So it's great. I mean,
Yeah. No, to get that experience, because there's a lot of people. I agree and I disagree. In the Krav Maga world, they're like, if you weren't in the military, you can't teach military stuff. If you weren't a police, you can't teach police stuff. So where I agree with it is, if you have no concept of how police operate or how the military operates, then you're just teaching techniques that you don't understand. But
right.
at the same time, it's like in Israel. Like I went to the sniper school, and the girls teaching us had never been deployed as a sniper, and yet they can teach just fine people how to be snipers. And so for me, it's a matter of, if you get the correct training and you understand what, say, police officers need to do or military needs
Yeah.
to do, then you can teach it just fine. But I think for you going and learning to be a police officer, it can only enhance your Krav Maga and your teaching,
Yeah,
because then
definitely.
you
Yeah.
know you get that other perspective on how that goes,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
if it makes sense. Because I find like a
That's
lot of people in the Krav Maga world are like, it's this way or no way, and I don't want to do. You can't teach this, and it's like, because I think it comes from, like, if I'm going to teach some police officers, they never give me an answer, which is annoying. But it's like, okay, what is your procedures so I can work around that? And they never want to tell you, at least in my experience, because they're very like secretive. Or I've
yeah.
had students who are police officers that want to bring me in and teach their team, and then they can't get permission because we don't want outsiders coming in.
No, they wouldn't have, they wouldn't
Yeah,
have outsiders even here. They're not.
yeah,
I mean, I really wanted to. I really wanted to. There was even a time when they called me and they said that they wanted me to join their instructors, but that
yeah.
was a long time ago, and I really didn't have the time to do that.
Mm,
And I'm really, I regret not taking this, because I really do think I have the ability to contribute, and it could be a really amazing experience. But now these days they won't have it. They're not even to the, you know, even if I go over there to the station that I volunteer in, and I say,
mm,
okay, let's just get together, open up a small group, and I'll teach you. They
yeah,
won't allow it. They won't allow
yeah,
it. We have our own instructors,
yeah,
and but I understand it's a matter of protocol. It's a matter
yeah.
of insurance. It's a matter of a lot of things. Yeah, I know. I understand that. I respect
Global
that. But
problem. Global problem.
yeah, global problems. Exactly.
Yeah. So one last thing, I think, because I think you mentioned it's something you spend a lot of time is teaching kids.
Yeah.
Um, I don't teach kids for a couple of reasons. One, there's not enough demand here. Two, I
Mm,
don't have the
yeah.
time, and I don't have the time and space. But I don't have a problem teaching kids, and a lot of Krav Maga people. I mean, you have to understand, like, hey, a 5-year-old, they can only do certain things, and an 8-year-old, the next cognitive development, they can do certain things. But a lot of Krav Maga, like, we don't teach kids, and they just
Yeah.
refuse to. Like, I don't, for practical reasons. One day I'd like to have a proper program for kids, but obviously you teach kids. How do you adapt or change things for the kids so that they're not like killing each other? Because that's the idea people
Oh,
have, like, oh, Krav Maga is too violent. I don't want my kid learning that.
actually, a few years back, I met someone who's one of the he does Krav Maga. He's a known instructor here in Israel. And then he met me and he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, I teach Krav Maga." And
Yeah.
he said, "So you teach teenagers, you teach adults?" And I said, "Yeah, but I also teach kids." And he says, "No, kids don't do Krav Maga." And I'm like, "You're telling me what I'm doing? You're telling me what the kids are doing? I can show you videos. I teach Krav Maga for kids." They
Yeah.
said, no, kids can't do Krav Maga. There is no Krav Maga for kids. And I was like, yes, there is. We had an argument, and I ended up hating him. And and I mean, we do. There's a lot of of hard work on making them understand when is it okay and when is it not okay to use Krav Maga. But it's a really long process. They start off with basic stuff, and we are aware that this is dangerous, but I always threat them. I always tell them that if I hear that they use Krav Maga outside of classes,
Mm,
and I hear about these things, and I do hear about these things because
mm,
I'm I know all the school teachers, and I know their parents, and I keep telling the parents to let me know. And if something like this happens, then I get them all and to sit down, and I tell them, okay, I heard that one of you have used Krav Maga in class on other kids, and all of a sudden they get scared because I
yeah.
keep threatening them. But it's a matter of also explaining them that this is dangerous, and this
Mm,
it comes from, I keep giving them the history of Krav Maga, where it all started, and I keep explaining them, that this is what they do in the IDF. This is
mm,
where it all started. And imagine yourself, soldiers are doing it to keep themselves and us safe. So I'm teaching you things that are so dangerous, and you have to keep this information to yourself. And they love it. They really ask me questions, and they love it. And so they understand that they can only use it if there's really a reason to use it. And actually what I do, what is actually happening, is that I keep hearing about kids that other kids are bullying them, and they're not using Krav Maga because they're afraid of hurting them. They're
mm,
afraid of doing some damage to them.
mm,
And then I have to and I have to change everything, and I have to go, okay, I know, but if someone is bullying you, then you can do certain things. And then we have to work on, what do I do if this kid is in my class? What do I do if he's a year older than me? What do I do if he's my brother or my sister? How do I react to that? So we're always working on these things as well.
mm.
It's a really interesting job. It's a really interesting thing to do, to work with kids. It's amazing, and you got so many things to do with them. You got so much to teach them,
Mm.
and the progress is amazing. I mean, you actually get raw material in your hands, because their head is not full of other things that they did in their past. You get them, you
Mm.
get like a clean sheet, and then you have the ability to shape them the way you want, which is amazing. Because if you have a kid coming to you and he starts training Krav Maga at the age of 5, and he stays and he gets to the age of 15 and he's still doing Krav Maga, you get yourself an amazing fighter,
Mm.
because you shaped him and he grew up into it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. I mean, this guy using Krav Maga later on in his life, he's going to be undefeated. It's it's
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah. When I did, like, I have run kids programs, but just, yeah, as I said, for practical reasons, I'm not doing it right now. But
You know
like,
that in Israel, you know that in Israel. Sorry,
mm,
but you know that in Israel, the majority of the majority of Krav Maga practitioners are kids.
yeah.
I have like, for example, I think I think maybe I have 17 group kids classes and only 3 adult classes.
Yeah.
Just so
You'd
yeah,
think
it's
you'd think
crazy.
it would be the opposite, but it
Yeah, you
is
think
what
it'll
it
be
is.
the opposite? No,
Yeah.
it's actually something that all the kids in my hometown, most of the kids in my hometown are in Krav Maga, and
Mm.
and most of the kids in the near hometown, which is also the place where we teach, they're in Krav Maga. I got
Yeah.
like I got 270 students
Mm.
in the other place that we teach, and only 20 of them are adults.
Yeah.
The rest are kids and
Yeah.
teenagers, but the
Yeah.
majority is kids. You know,
So I'm the opposite. It's mostly adults here.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
know.
when I did teach kids, I found, like, because I find they get bored really easily, right? They're kids,
Yeah,
and I was like, hey, how do I teach it? And I realized, like you said, they're much more open to learning. That I was actually able to teach some of the higher level curriculum, or the boxing, the kickboxing, the wrestling, to the kids earlier, and they develop really fast compared to the adults who are come in with a much
right.
more, like, I'm here to learn self-defense, and I have to open them up to learning that other stuff, which is they don't realize is self-defense. With the kids, it's like, unfortunately, I never had a kid program long enough to, like, really see them grow over like a 5 or 10
Progress.
year
Yeah.
period. But it is true that like you cannot teach kids the way you teach adults, and you got to be willing to teach them, I think, more than you think you can, because they'll pick it up. And as long as they're not running around like killing each other, which is yeah, I actually had a funny story on that. I had a girl who is progressing really fast, and they're like, the dad comes in, he's like, we had an incident. He's like, what? Well, her cousin was bullying her and she kicked him in the nuts, and her mother is very upset. I'm like, well, at least you know it works. So
Yeah.
then we had to have the conversation about, was it really appropriate? And then I can't remember, but it's funny because they either learn I'm gonna do it, or as you said, like I don't want to hurt
I have to
people.
be, yeah, I have to be
Yeah,
careful. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always
I know.
interesting. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
people with kids, it's like kids learn so much more than people realize. It's like just because the kid isn't able to convey to you that they understand doesn't mean that in like 5 years they don't like they got it, you know. And I think people, because an adult you can ask them and they can tell you, or you can
Right.
watch
Yeah. Yeah.
them. You know, adult hypothetically knows how to use their body already. With a kid,
True.
it's like you're not really sure what you're watching yet, and you have to wait 6 months, a year to figure out, oh, they did get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get amazing results from kids. It's just, it's great. I mean, and we do so much more than just the Krav Maga techniques. I mean, I get them into a really good shape. As you
Yeah.
said, it's really pretty difficult to. Yeah, they get bored really easily, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's why I combine a lot of fitness training during these classes, and I change things around. I use the techniques as a game, and I actually, when it comes to little kids, I call it Krav Maga games, self defense games.
Mm.
That's the title, and
Yeah.
that's why most people bring them over, and I tell them that I keep telling them that they're learning self defense in a nice environment. I keep doing it, I keep it like a very fun environment. We laugh, and they make me laugh, and
Yeah.
we run around. I when I have this class, when I have 4 years olds and 5-year-old kids, I run around with them. I get tired. I get more, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting teaching them
Yeah.
because I run around with them and we jump and we do a lot of things, but they do learn Kamaga in the process. I mean,
Yeah.
either they learn how to hit, use their hands, to kick, but they tie it up with a very nice experience.
Mm.
So it's not like this is a violent environment and you are my soldiers and all of you have to stand, and there's not like, I'm not tough with them. And on one hand, on the other hand, they have to be,
Yeah.
they have to listen to me and they have to do exactly what I say. They can't just hit each other. But still, I want them to finish every class, every lesson, and have fun, and
Yeah.
enjoy it. And so yeah, it's difficult. It takes time to to learn how to do it and get used to it. And there are a lot of instructors who just don't want to work with kids because
Mm.
they don't want to invest so much energy into their class. I mean, it
Yeah.
is exhausting working
Oh
with
yeah.
kids.
Oh yeah.
But for me, I'm looking at the result. I'm looking at what I get back from them, and that's the thing that fills me up with energy to
Mm.
the next class. I mean, seeing a 4-year-old kid working the pads, 4-year-old kid, when I
Yeah.
hold the pads and he's working and he's hitting and he's doing it the right way, and he hears the sound from the pad, and then I tell him, oh my God, that was strong, that was great,
Mm.
and he's so happy. And he understands how to defend himself if someone is trying to hit him, and he knows how to break when he's falling on the mat. So these things are I mean, it's amazing. You don't get that from
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah, I
I mean, you
think
get results from adults, but you
yeah.
expect that. You don't expect it from a kid. It always surprises me every
Well,
single
that's like
time.
one of the things being an instructor, you get fatigued. Sometimes you're like, oh, why am I doing this? But because sometimes with
Yeah.
adults, you might get a group of people and they're just for 6 months, nobody's progressing. But with like the kids, like it's very noticeable and you get that feedback, a lot quicker. And I think it can be a lot more satisfying. And then you're like, oh, this kid is going to be something if they keep going. Now, is there anything you guys won't teach the kids? Because, for example, I always had when I was teaching kids, I'm like, do I teach with plastic knives? Do I not? How do I approach that? I was debating because, like, you see some of these kids on the internet, like a 6-year-old with like a katana, and I'm like, well, they're clearly
No.
capable, but like, how do you kind of draw the line when you will involve like knife or not, or?
So we actually what we did was we kind of changed the curriculum, and
Mm,
we kind of adjusted it
mm,
so that it would fit the kids. So when I test them for when I do the grading test, it's
mm,
kind of different than from the adult grading test. So I just take things down. For instance, a kid will not learn knife defense.
mm,
Okay, he will do the 360 defenses, and later on, when he'll grow up, if he keeps doing Krav Maga, he's gonna learn how to do the knife defenses, because it's gonna, he's gonna be tested on it at a later stage.
mm,
So we actually take things that uh, that will happen to them in their real life. So I will teach them what will happen if someone grabs their shirt or chokes them. But there are certain things that I will not teach them.
mm,
For example, if the head is low, I will not teach them to do this hammer
mm,
fist over to the back of the head and neck,
mm.
because I'm afraid that they won't understand how
Yeah.
dangerous this is. But I don't mind them, hitting the face or the stomach, or and understanding that hitting the stomach is not as effective as hitting someone in the face.
Mm,
So we did change the curriculum a little bit,
mm,
just toned it down. That's it. Just toned it down, and they know when they get like this sheet of paper that they have all the techniques written down when they're before their grading test. So it says, okay, if they're going to be tested for orange belt, it says orange belt, and then it says kids grade. Okay,
mm,
it's not going to be the adult. The adult, and I keep telling them, if you're an adult and you're doing this test, it's going to be a lot more difficult, and there are a lot more techniques. And they keep saying, but why aren't we learning them? And I said, because you're too young.
yeah.
If you're going to grow up and you're still in Krav Maga, I'm going to teach you everything, but not right now.
Mm,
So we just complete this. We just keep if they if they grow up and they're still in Krav Maga, then they're just gonna um, learn these techniques later on, and just
mm,
get tested on these things. But yeah, I mean, knife, they don't touch a knife
mm.
for their teenagers.
Yeah.
Um, just because I don't want them to. I don't want them to. I don't think
Yeah.
it's I don't think a kid should even think about the idea of someone running towards them with a knife or trying to
Yeah.
stab them.
Yeah, that might be a little traumatizing.
Yeah,
The
but
but
we do talk about it. We do talk about it, by the way. We
mm,
do talk about it when we do the 360 defenses. I keep talking about it because, in school you got scissors,
mm,
you got pens, you got broken bottles, you got a lot of things that could happen. So we do talk about these things, but I'm
mm,
not really addressing to it as a knife and stabbing, and I'm just letting them understand that sometimes things can get, they need to realize that sometimes, even if someone is coming towards them with scissors or whatever, they need to change their defense, but I don't want to scare them. I
yeah.
don't want to make them, even though they really want to learn it, they really want to learn these things, but I keep telling
Yeah.
them not right now.
Well, eventually you keep going. Now, because that's
Yeah, maybe
actually
that they'll make them stay till they're
yeah.
teenagers and adults.
It actually brought up a point that I was always wondering because I never was able to do it because I never had a kids program advanced enough is the transition period from kids rank to adult rank.
Mhm.
Because there's many ways you can approach it. How do you guys sort of like say they're, I don't know, a green belt kids rank and then they get old enough? How would you transition them into the adult rank given that they didn't learn certain things?
We have first of all, you also have to make sure that you don't get them to progress too fast. I
Mm,
mean, for example, if for a kid to reach a green belt, it means that he's either training a lot,
mm,
or already reaching to a point where he's close to being a teenager. But
mm,
we also have, we keep we're changing the tests,
mm,
and once he's like once he's progressed and he's capable of doing the adult version of this test, then all he has to do is just work harder for his test, and maybe even do a couple of like demo tests. Okay, so I'm telling you, okay, you know what, we're just gonna do like a demo test, and I'm just gonna check and help you during this process so you understand what you're dealing with. And you're just going to show me how you do the techniques, and I'll just write down a few notes, and I'll give it to you, and I'll tell you where you have to get better. Or I can decide that I'm, in between, let's say, green belt and blue belt, I'm going to do a half green, half blue belt. Okay, so like it's a middle rank, which is what we do with the kids, by the way, because we want to get them to if he's going to be a blue belt, then I want him to be really good. For us, by the way, a blue belt is already someone who's supposed to be really, really good at Krav Maga. So not many people get to this level, and it takes a lot of time, a long time to get to this level. So they understand when they get to green belt, they understand that from here things are going to be a lot more difficult. And we just do this middle rank, and then from there, when they get to the point where they're doing the blue belt test, and they have to learn everything, just complete the entire curriculum as it is for the adults.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
that's what
makes
we do.
sense. Yeah, it's similar to, say, jujitsu, except, jujitsu, they don't always do testing per se, but there's those in between ranks. They add a whole bunch of ranks, and then you can't, say, for jujitsu, you cannot get your blue belt until you're like your adult blue belt till you're 16, I think. So basically, you go through all the kids' ranks for like 10 years, then you're a blue belt, and then they just progress you really quickly once you're an adult, depending on the skill.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of transition is always possibly a reason why a lot of people don't want to teach kids, because it's like they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I know.
It's a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So I think we're coming up on 2 hours. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so.
Mm.
I
Covered
really don't
everything?
think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It is.
yeah, like, because, I come from I train with many different organizations, whoever, so I kind of have a different perspective sometimes compared to people who only stayed with the same
Yeah.
organization the whole time. And I mean, I found that beneficial personally, because if you're always around the same people, you all think the same. Now, in Israel, it's easier to sort of cross train a little bit, even if you're still loyal to your organization, because everyone lives close. So you can be like, hey, I'm just
Right.
gonna go
Yeah. Yeah.
train with this person, versus, out where I am. Like, even when I invite other people, I've invited some of the other schools over here and there, and they never want to show up. Never want to come and train, or invite someone big and they never want to come. Oh, that's not our, I'm like, yeah, but we're like, there's like three legitimate schools here, and then some not so legitimate schools. Like, don't you all want to like learn? And they're like, no. I feel like they just don't want to bring their students, and they don't want to look bad or something, but ego is
Oh.
everywhere. Who knows? Because
Yeah, I understand.
that did happen once or twice, with something I did want to talk was gun disarms. And
Mm.
this has happened to me before, where I'm training with other people who are like black belt martial artists, whatever they are. And it came to the gun stuff. And because they were so traditional martial artists, we got to the gun stuff, and it's like they had no idea what they were doing. And one thing I will do, I have airsoft guns. So the magazine comes out.
Yeah.
And this is a thing I noticed. If someone doesn't understand guns, sometimes when you do a gun disarm, the magazine falls out. And if they don't
True.
understand, when the magazine falls out, they stop, look at the ground, and they're like, I broke it. And I'm like, wait, are you teaching gun disarms? Like, and I have had that happen with other instructors before. And I'm just like, it drives me nuts when people are teaching like the gun stuff to beginners and they don't even know what they're doing.
They don't know. Yeah.
At what point do you guys integrate sort of gun disarms and offensive gun use, or into your curriculum?
Usually only adults.
Mm,
Actually, we only teach adults, but as I said, we sometimes have training camps, and sometimes I have training camps for teenagers as well.
mm,
But when and I want to make it interesting for them, so I incorporate one or two gun disarming.
mm,
But before I do it, I give them a full lecture on how the gun works
Mm.
and the different parts of the gun, and what happens when someone draws a gun, so they understand better, and what you have to be careful when you, the things that you have to be careful and to avoid when you're working with when you're actually disarming a gun. And because I mean, most of them are never going to be, most of them will never face a
Mm.
situation when someone points a gun at them. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it rarely happens over here.
Mm.
But if they are practicing it, if they are doing it, then I want them to understand fully. So yeah, I give them the full lecture. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, kids
Yeah.
don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And teenagers, as I said, every now and then, but only, you know, as part of, like, let's say a training camp where I have enough time to explain the whole thing and
Mm.
to practice and to, you know, get to
Yeah.
the bottom of it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, because Israel's interesting, because like everyone does the military, so eventually, well, not everyone, but you, eventually they'll get some experience with firearms, even
Yeah.
if only a little bit. So it's like when it transitions out of there, I find sometimes Israeli organizations they don't integrate it at all. But then when we come to a place like Canada, it's like people don't have gun exposure here unless they
Mhm,
hunt
mhm.
or something, or very few people do the military. I had a slightly easy solution because we have a gun license here. If you want to get your guns, you have to get your gun license. I happen to teach the course now. It was harder before when I was not allowed to. But I'm like, go get your gun license. And then I teach the gun stuff at Greenbelt, so midway up. Because for me, I see, especially in North America, people are teaching like hostage stuff and the gun thing and all this fancy stuff. And I'm like, show me how you punch first. And they can't. And I'm like, you think you're going to take a gun away from somebody and you can't even punch? But
Right.
you know, people do it for marketing because that's what people want to learn.
Yeah, because it's
You know,
cool. Yeah, yeah, sure.
yeah. And I'm like,
It
nope,
looks good.
you got to learn how to punch, how to kick, how to move, how to grapple. Because guess what? If you grab that gun and it goes wrong and you can't do that stuff, someone's getting shot and it might be you.
That's true.
It's
Yeah. Oh wow,
yeah. So I'm just like,
definitely.
go get your gun license so that legally I'm protected, so that they're
Mhm.
allowed to be around guns, but also that they actually it's a 2 day course here where they go through the history of guns and basic firearms. You have to go through the five actions: pump action, semi-automatic, lever action. I'm
Mhm.
forgetting one. Brake action and something bolt action for the rifles, and for pistols you have to learn how to handle a double action and single action revolver
Yeah.
and semi-automatic. So by the time they actually start learning the Krav, they have an understanding of how it works properly, so that they're not like, yeah. I've always found it interesting how the Israelis approach the gun stuff because there's the military versus the North
Yeah.
Americans. It's just very different. But I think that's probably we covered a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If people want to contact you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Um, well, I have everything is out there on Instagram and on Facebook. The
Mm,
entire information is over there. You got you can, yeah, you got my phone number, you got my email,
yeah,
and messages and message the Facebook Messenger, as yeah, you
yeah,
know, as you know.
yeah.
And I try to really um, you know, always stay online and always see if I get messages, and that when people are sending me messages and they tell me that I inspire them, or I mean,
Mm.
it's embarrassing, but these things happen and people share things with me, like I'm doing Krav Maga for this and this, and I'm training here and there, and I watch your videos and I saw you on social media, and they ask me questions, and I answer everybody. I try to answer everybody,
Mm.
and with pleasure. I mean, no problem. I
Oh,
mean,
I'll put it out there. Does Krav Maga Israel have an English website or is it only in Hebrew? I
yeah,
didn't
there
look on
is
it.
an English website. I have to say that our website is pretty lame, but I'm not. I'm sorry, but I'm not responsible for it. I'm mainly. Yeah, I got the. We have a Facebook page which recently got active right now, and also
Mm,
an Instagram page. So there, you have a lot of information and a lot of what we do over there as well. But we do have a website, and
mm.
And there is a little bit of information over there, but mainly on Facebook, Instagram.
Okay. I'll make sure I'll put it all up in the episode notes.
No
Thanks for coming on, and
thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
That was so great.
Whenever
I really had a lot of fun.
Yeah, whenever I can get to Israel again, which is probably going to be a while at this point, I'll have to come train with everyone I've talked to.
You are more than welcome to come over here, and no problem.
Yeah. Hey.
Thank you for listening to the Warriors Den podcast. If you like this podcast and our content, make sure you support us in the many various ways you can. The easy and free ways start with liking, subscribing, following, and leaving a positive review wherever you may be listening or watching.
You're listening to The Warriors Den. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga. Turning lambs into lions.